Hey guys, Dash from Ninjaland Games here with a special Star Wars episode. You may have heard the theory about Jar Jar Binks being a Sith Lord. This theory has been spreading around on the internet and also on Reddit, and there's a couple videos on YouTube. If you haven't heard about it yet, it's a pretty interesting theory. Go check out some YouTube videos. Well, it is an interesting theory. After analyzing all of the points, I'm here to report that the Force is not very strong with this theory. As you go through, each point can be easily countered, and if you watch the episode 1 again, you'll definitely get a different vibe of what's going on. And I'm going to go through some of these points. You can see for yourself whether these counterpoints are good enough evidence for you or not. I don't really care if you believe either way. Just thought I'd put this video out here for people to take a second look at this theory and maybe be a little bit more cautious as they look at theories online. Okay, so first off, one of the main points is basically that Jar Jar does things that only Jedis would do, such as force jumps and mind manipulation. Yeah, I suggest you go watch one of the videos out there. You can look at Dan Brown's video talking about Jar Jar as a Sith Lord, and he brings up a lot of the points there. They start from the very beginning, right when Jar Jar is introduced in episode 1, and Jar Jar is basically right in the way of Qui-Gon Jinn as Qui-Gon is running from a stampede of animals on planet Naboo. So Jar Jar is kind of like gets in Qui-Gon's way and gets knocked over, and they both dodge the stampede. But if you actually pay attention to what Jar Jar is doing, you can see that he's really caught off guard. He doesn't know which way to run, and so he actually is in state of confusion when Qui-Gon knocks him over. Later on, he actually tells Padme in a scene that he was out going for a walk when all of a sudden he was caught up in the stampede, and then he got hit by the Jedi, so he just held on to the Jedi, thinking that the Jedi would be able to help him. So that's a kind of an explanation for why Jar Jar was there at that time. Then you see Jar Jar doing the jump up into the air, and people claim that this is a force jump, that only Jedi could jump that high. But if you look at Jar Jar, he's kind of amphibian-like, and I think they were going for him to kind of have maybe even like a frog-like jump into the water. Also, George Lucas and others have said that Jar Jar's inspiration was Goofy, and I would have to say that that's definitely true. And if you see how Goofy acts in different Disney cartoons, he acts very similar to Jar Jar, and this idea that Goofy was inspiration for Jar Jar pretty much shuts down a lot of the Sith stuff that's going on with this Jar Jar theory. But basically, this jump that he does, you gotta realize that Jar Jar is very comfortable in the water, and that's what it's showing, is that he can jump and do all sorts of dives and whatnot because he's very comfortable with the water. He most likely, they're amphibian-like, the Gungans are amphibian-like creatures, and so they most likely dive out of the water quite often and can probably learn from very young how to do tricks like that. I don't think that's such a big deal, and the biggest thing that shuts this thing down is that both Qui-Gon and Obi-Wan were standing right there when he does the jump, and they're not taken by surprise at all. In fact, that's implying that they understand that the Gungans, when they're in the water, can do that kind of thing. They're not surprised about this at all, and they don't show any kind of recognition that he's using the Force or anything. It's something that would happen normally, and they're not surprised by it. Which basically means that it wasn't a Force jump, it was actually just a jump that Jar Jar was able to perform, and he can perform it well because he's done all sorts of water maneuvers before. He's comfortable in the water. If you notice Jar Jar in other areas, he's not comfortable on land at all. He's comfortable in the water. Okay, now there's another scene where Jar Jar falls down when there's a bunch of droids walking by, and the Jedi jump out of the window down and start attacking the droids, and Jar Jar, he starts to fall, he grabs onto the ledge of something, and then he's kind of swinging back and forth, and then he kind of falls, and it shows him fall on the next shot. And in that scene, all I gotta say is that there's no use of the Force at all. All he is basically swinging back and forth, and he falls one way, and he falls down right in front of the camera. I don't see that as any proof. And the droid looking both ways, the droid is just looking around the room for enemies to fire at, and I don't think that it has anything to do with Jar Jar having a Force jump right there. Now, there's also, with Jar Jar, when they get to Tatooine, and Jar Jar goes with Qui-Gon Jinn, and people ask, well, why did Jar Jar go with Qui-Gon Jinn? Isn't that a little odd? Actually, it is a little odd, but in the original script, my friend informed me that in the original script, the Queen doesn't want Jar Jar around the ship because she doesn't want him getting into things, and she doesn't really like Gungans in the first place. It is in the first script of the Phantom Menace. It's actually implied that the Naboo people are kind of almost racist against the Gungans, and they don't get along with them, and they don't like them. And so the Queen actually doesn't want Jar Jar on the ship, and so she tells Qui-Gon to take him with him, which would make sense since he came with the Jedi in the first place. She doesn't want him around the ship bumping into things and getting in and making messes. So that's why actually Jar Jar is going with Qui-Gon. But I think it's also a convenient excuse for George Lucas to have Jar Jar go with them so that he can meet Anakin, become friends with Anakin, and overall, and they chose to pick a younger Anakin because they're trying to appeal to the younger crowd with the Phantom Menace. And they wanted to have Jar Jar be kind of the friendly character that was going to appeal to the younger crowd as well. And so basically George Lucas, had Jar Jar go along so he could be there for the pod race, so that he could be there for the different things that Anakin does, also just so they can build up Jar Jar as a character and the funny little things that he does. And, people hate that aspect of Phantom Menace, but it's nonetheless, that's the truth of it. George Lucas wanted to have Jar Jar in there to be friendly towards Anakin, and then the kids while watching the movie would relate to Anakin, and in the turn would relate to Jar Jar as a friend. Now, we also on the scene where he's leaving, they're leaving out of the ship at Tatooine. People say that Jar Jar uses Force manipulation to make the soldier, the guard of the Queen, say, that he wants to come with him, and that he mouths the same things that he's saying. And if you look at it over and over again, it actually just looks like Jar Jar is breathing heavily, probably because he's in the sun, and also he's kind of like smacking his lips a little bit. It doesn't necessarily mean that he's mouthing exactly what he says. If he was, that doesn't make any sense whatsoever, because the Padme, or the Queen, was coming up to join Qui-Gon anyways. And so why would the guy's already trying to convince her to take him? Why would Jar Jar basically, he's not manipulating anything. He'd be absolutely arguing on the same point that guy was already arguing on. He's not changing the guy's mind or anything. There's no manipulation going on. And frankly, that scene doesn't make any sense of why he would manipulate that person to say that certain thing, because the guard was already coming out to help Padme go with Qui-Gon in the first place. There's a lot of scenes like that too, where they're trying to say that there's force manipulation going on, when in the context of the scene and in the context of the plot and the situation of what's happening, makes no sense of why there would be manipulation being there. There's really no point for it. So in another part of Tatooine, people say that Jar Jar informed Palpatine and Darth Maul that Qui-Gon Jinn and Obi-Wan were on Tatooine, and that they say that there was the message that was sent out, and they're saying that it's a trap, don't respond to it. And it was a trap because Darth Maul had sent that out. But in the scene next to it, and people suppose that Jar Jar could have warned the Sith about this, but in the scene where Darth Maul walks up to Palpatine on Coruscant, Darth Maul actually says that the scanners found them, and no one notified him anything. He said that the scanners found them. In other words, Darth Maul sent out scanners, and those little droid scanners that he has found out where they were. That's how he found out that they're on Tatooine. And he says it clearly in the scene if you just watch it. So as mentioned before, there's a lot of hand-waving that goes on with Jar Jar, and people claim that all this little hand-waving that he does is using force manipulation. But just because he's waving his hands doesn't mean he's force manipulating people. Actually, what I believe it is it's the CGI artist trying to put expression into that character, because if you look at animation, lots of times animated characters will wave their arms around and act very expressively. When you're animating CGI, it's a lot harder to get the facial expressions and whatnot and get everything to be more expressive. Mistakes sometimes in animating and over animating things to somewhat exaggerate the way that people talk and move. So they do that so that you can relate to a CG character, because a person who's watching it, if they see a CG character, they're going to almost be like, oh, I don't believe this. I'm not into this person because it looks fake. But when you have those extra expressions in there, it gets people to empathize with the character more, and therefore disregard what the people think about the CGI. And that's why he's doing a lot of arm wavings a lot of times, just because he's supposed to be a cartoon-like animated character who's got that kind of personality, who's basically just very animated. So now we'll get to the battle sequences. In the battle sequences, in the theory, they say that Jar Jar has a drunken style of fighting, drunken kung fu style fighting, and that basically it deals with acting like you are drunk when you're fighting, which is a true martial art. If you go watch Jackie Chan's Drunken Master, you can go see him do that, and it's really cool looking. And I would say that Jar Jar's, some of his fights might have that kind of attitude about it, but it's not quite drunken fighting, because The drunken fighting is a lot more controlled than what Jar Jar does. If you watch Jar Jar's battle scenes, he is going crazy. He's out of control. He basically doesn't know what he's doing. He's falling everywhere and messing up on everything. And like as I said before, George Lucas' inspiration for Jar Jar was Goofy. He wanted someone who is goofy. And if you watch any Goofy cartoons, you'll see how Goofy does all sorts of crazy stuff when he's not even trying to. He's trying to, basically, he's just bumping and bumping and moving around in a weird way and getting through all sorts of crazy stuff and surviving. Jar Jar also parallels George Lucas's fascination with the movie called The Hidden Fortress. It's Akira Kurosawa's samurai movie where two peasants bump and goof their way through a huge battlefield and end up becoming heroes. And in C-3PO and R2-D2 were both homages to that movie, The Hidden Fortress, and how C-3PO and R2 were pretty much the comic relief that George Lucas wanted for the first trilogy. And then starting Phantom Menace, he decided that he was going to make a character that's a little bit more outlandish, and he wanted that character to be the comic relief, much like C-3PO and R2 were in the original trilogy. He also really took a huge homage in that battle sequence with Jar Jar from the Hidden Fortress, just basically, and also Goofy, basically trying to make it seem as if Jar Jar unknowingly bumped his way into becoming a hero, which that's what happens in the movie. And it has nothing to do with Jar Jar having force powers. It has everything to do with George Lucas really being fascinated with the movie The Hidden Fortress and trying to homage to that movie, as he did previously with C-3PO and R2 as well. And even C-3PO and R2 have their scenes where they're bumping and goofing around through battles, and they make it through alive as well. So yeah, some of the stuff that Jar Jar does is a little bit unbelievable. That's the whole point. The whole point is to be funny. The whole point is to be homage to Hidden Fortress and to basically be the comic relief for the series, the new trilogy. And I really believe that's what George Lucas had in mind, and people really misinterpreted it. And now they want to assume a bunch of things about it to redeem it in some way. It is what it is, and you just have to take it for the choice that George Lucas made. Okay, so I hope that wraps up a lot of the different theories that are out there about Jar Jar. And we could go into also how Jar Jar ends up becoming basically manipulated by Palpatine to give him powers. And I would say, and he does that, Jar Jar does that because Jar Jar is trying to prove himself as a senator. He's not experienced with becoming a senator, and so he feels like he needs to do something big to prove himself, which is actually a typical move that politicians make a lot of times. When they feel like they're unexperienced or they're weak, they try to show that they're powerful by doing something big. And so therefore, Jar Jar actually fits the mold perfectly for that to happen. He comes into office and he ends up making a mistake by giving Palpatine powers, but he does that because he feels like it is the right thing to do, and he's convinced that it is the right thing to do. Therefore, he takes a strong stance and ends up basically convincing everyone to give powers to Palpatine, but he doesn't necessarily convince everyone because there's a lot of people that want the Emperor to take power in the first place. They're really upset over the separatist movement, and so it's not that big of a deal. It's just one speech that Jar Jar gives to kind of persuade maybe some of the people, and especially him being one of the lower level kind of people seen on Naboo, because the Gungans were seen as kind of like the average folk kind of people. So that's why he feels that he need to speak up. And the theory goes on, and even saying that Jar Jar Binks is maybe Kylo Ren's boss, which is absolutely ridiculous. And they say that Jar Jar Binks is possibly Snoke from the new series, and that Jar Jar is going to come in somewhere into The Force Awakens or into the future series of Star Wars. But I would have to say that with J.J. Abrams, he's clearly said that he hates Jar Jar. He doesn't want Jar Jar in his movies at all, and will not put Jar Jar in the movies. So therefore, Snoke is not Jar Jar. And yes, so J.J. Abrams come out very strong. You might think that some people say, oh, he might be misleading everyone, but that is highly unlikely due to the fact that there is a large portion of people that actually do hate Jar Jar and do not want to see his face ever again. So that would be a very dangerous move on Disney's part. And then there's the theory that George Lucas was intending to make Jar Jar evil, and that he basically backed out of the whole deal. But as I explained before, Jar Jar's inspiration was Goofy, and George Lucas actually likes Jar Jar as a character. He did not want to make him evil, and I highly, highly doubt anything along the lines of George Lucas thinking of Jar Jar in an evil way. Instead, he was thinking of Jar Jar as just a fun, innocent character that would be fun to watch, much along the lines of C-3PO and R2. And so there you go. Those are all my counterpoints to the theory. If there's any more points, I'd be happy to counter them, because this theory is really funny to follow, and it's a fun theory to think about and to follow. But I feel like it doesn't have really any kind of meat to it to keep it alive. Most likely it'll be forgotten soon as the new series comes out. But anyways, hope you enjoyed this video, and hope you like and subscribe and share this video with all your friends who may be bored of Jar Jar Binks theory. Anyways, hope you subscribe and like the video, and I'll see you next time. And if there's any other kind of weird theories, I'd be happy to tackle them. If you have any suggestions for videos, post them below. And anyways, thanks for watching this video, and have a great day, and have a fun time watching Star Wars Force Awakens. It's going to be awesome. See you later. Bye.